One of the most revealing signs that someone may secretly resent you is not what happens when you fail, but what happens when you succeed. Failure is often easy for people to tolerate. When you struggle, make mistakes, or need help, certain friends may suddenly become warm, supportive, and available. But when your life begins to improve, something subtle changes. Their enthusiasm becomes quieter. Their attention becomes weaker. Their congratulations feel forced. And sometimes without any obvious conflict, they begin creating distance. This is where you need to become more observant. A genuine friend does not need you to remain unsuccessful so they can feel secure about themselves. Your progress does not threaten their identity. When something good happens to you, they can celebrate it without secretly comparing their life to yours. But someone carrying hidden resentment may experience your success differently. Your achievement becomes a reminder of what they believe they lack. You get a promotion, and instead of asking how you earned it, they immediately mention how lucky you were. You accomplished something difficult, and they focus on the one thing that could have been better. You become more confident, and suddenly they start reminding you of the person you used to be. You improve your appearance, your finances, your career, or your social life, and their behavior becomes strangely uncomfortable. Individually, none of these moments proves hatred. People can be insecure. People can have difficult days. People can struggle with comparison without consciously wishing you harm. The important thing is the pattern. Watch what happens repeatedly when your life moves forward. Do they celebrate your victories, or do they minimize them? Do they ask questions because they are genuinely interested, or do they immediately search for a weakness? Do they encourage your ambitions, or do they repeatedly tell you that your goals are unrealistic? Do they become happier when you experience setbacks than when you experience progress? These questions reveal more than words ever could. One of the most dangerous forms of resentment is disguised as concern. Someone may say, "I'm just trying to protect you," while constantly discouraging every opportunity that could make you stronger. They may tell you not to take a risk, not because the risk is genuinely dangerous, but because your success would change the balance between you. Sometimes people become comfortable with a version of you that they can understand and predict. When you begin changing, they feel that the relationship itself is changing. Your growth may force them to confront their own lack of progress, and instead of confronting themselves, they may try to pull you backward. This is why your growth can reveal the true nature of relationships. Do not become arrogant simply because someone does not celebrate everything you do, and do not immediately label every critical person as an enemy. Healthy friends can challenge you. They can tell you when you are making a mistake. They can question your decisions without secretly wishing you failure. The difference is intention and pattern. A real friend can tell you an uncomfortable truth and still want you to win. A resentful person may disguise discouragement as honesty while repeatedly becoming uncomfortable whenever you move ahead. There is another subtle sign. Their energy changes when others praise you. Notice their face, their tone, and their willingness to participate in your happiness. Someone who genuinely cares about you does not need to compete with every compliment you receive. But someone who secretly compares themselves to you may immediately redirect attention toward themselves, mention their own accomplishments, or find a way to reduce yours. Do not obsess over these details. Observe them. You are not looking for evidence to justify suspicion. You are learning to recognize patterns so you can protect your relationships and your peace. The goal is not to assume everyone is secretly against you. The goal is to stop being blind to what consistent behavior is telling you. Your success does not create someone's resentment. It reveals what was already inside them. So keep growing, keep improving, keep becoming stronger, and watch carefully who becomes genuinely happy when your life gets better, and who quietly wishes you would return to the version of yourself they found easier to tolerate. Because sometimes the clearest test of friendship is not who stands beside you when you are struggling, but who can sincerely celebrate you when you begin to rise. Not every insult is an attack, and not every joke carries hidden resentment. But when someone repeatedly disguises disrespect as humor, you need to pay attention to the pattern rather than the excuse. There are people who will never openly tell you that they dislike you. Instead, they hide their hostility behind laughter, sarcasm, teasing, and comments that can always be defended with the words, "I was only joking." This gives them a convenient escape. They can hurt you while pretending they had no intention of doing so. The important question is not whether someone makes jokes about you. Healthy friendships often contain teasing, and people who genuinely care about you can laugh at your weaknesses without trying to destroy your confidence. The real warning sign appears when the humor repeatedly moves in one direction. They are always the one making you smaller, and you are always the target. Notice what happens when other people are present. Do they make jokes about your failures while everyone is listening? Do they bring up private mistakes that you trusted them with? Do they imitate you in a way designed to embarrass you? Do they compliment you and immediately attach an insult to it? "You actually look good today," followed by a laugh. "You did surprisingly well," as if success was unexpected. "I didn't think you were capable of that." These statements may sound harmless when isolated, but repeated patterns reveal intention more clearly. A backhanded compliment is especially revealing because it contains two messages. On the surface, it sounds positive. Beneath the surface, it reduces your achievement. The person can claim they praised you while still communicating that they do not want you to feel too confident. This is how hidden resentment often operates. It rarely announces itself. It searches for plausible deniability. The person wants to release their hostility without accepting responsibility for it. So they joke, they tease, they make a sarcastic comment, and then watch your reaction. If you become upset, they tell you that you are too sensitive. If you remain silent, they may continue because they believe they have found something they can get away with. And this is where self-control becomes important. Do not immediately explode. Do not accuse someone of secretly hating you based on one comment. Emotional reactions can make it difficult to see the larger pattern. Instead, observe. Did the comment happen once, or does it happen constantly? Do they make these jokes only around certain people? Do they become uncomfortable when you receive praise? Do they stop when you clearly communicate a boundary? Or do they become even more aggressive? Your reaction can also teach you something about the relationship. If you calmly say that something bothered you and the person genuinely cares about you, they may apologize, explain themselves, and adjust their behavior. They might say they did not realize the joke crossed a line. That is very different from someone who repeatedly dismisses your feelings, calls you weak for objecting, and continues doing the same thing. Respect is visible in what happens after a boundary is communicated. A friend does not need to agree with everything you feel, but they should care about the effect their behavior has on you. Someone who secretly resents you may treat your discomfort as entertainment. They may enjoy watching you become defensive because your reaction gives them a sense of control. Do not give them that satisfaction. You do not need to win every exchange. You do not need to create a dramatic confrontation. Sometimes the most powerful response is simply recognizing what is happening and reducing your emotional investment. Stop providing sensitive information to someone who repeatedly turns it into ammunition. Stop explaining yourself to someone who only wants material for another joke. And stop confusing familiarity with loyalty. The deepest lesson is that words reveal patterns when you listen carefully. People may hide their intentions, but repeated behavior is difficult to disguise forever. A joke becomes meaningful when the same person keeps using humor to diminish you. So listen beyond the laughter. Watch what their words consistently do to your confidence, your reputation, and your sense of dignity. Sometimes the joke is not really a joke. Sometimes it is resentment looking for a safe place to hide. One of the most difficult forms of hidden resentment to recognize is the kind that disguises itself as concern. A person may not openly attack you, insult you, or celebrate your failures. Instead, they may remain close to you while quietly discouraging every step that could improve your life. They want your attention, your loyalty, and your presence, but they become uncomfortable when you begin to grow beyond the version of yourself they are accustomed to. This creates a strange contradiction. They want to keep you close, but they do not necessarily want to see you become stronger. Pay attention to the advice you receive from the people around you. Advice itself is not the problem. A genuine friend should sometimes challenge you, warn you about mistakes, and tell you uncomfortable truths. But there is a difference between protecting you from a genuine danger and protecting themselves from the possibility of your success. When you announce a new goal, what happens? Do they become curious and ask how they can support you? Or do they immediately list everything that could go wrong? When you decide to learn something new, do they encourage you to develop the skill, or do they laugh at the idea? When you begin improving your habits, do they respect the change, or do they repeatedly tempt you back into the behaviors you are trying to leave behind? One moment means little. A pattern means something. Sometimes people become attached to the role you play in their life. Perhaps you are the person they always call when they need attention. Perhaps you are the friend who never says no. Perhaps you are the person who constantly joins them in distractions, unhealthy habits, or endless complaining. As long as you remain in that role, the relationship feels comfortable. But the moment you change, the balance changes. You begin waking up earlier. You become more disciplined. You stop wasting time. You start pursuing a serious goal. You become more selective about who receives your attention. Suddenly, the same people who once enjoyed having constant access to you begin questioning your choices. They may say you have changed, and perhaps you have, but change is not always betrayal. Sometimes it is growth. A person who secretly resents your progress may try to make you feel guilty for becoming more disciplined. They may tell you that you are taking life too seriously. They may mock your ambition. They may remind you of your past whenever you begin acting differently. They may encourage you to return to habits that keep you comfortable because your improvement forces them to confront their own lack of movement. This is why you must learn to distinguish genuine concern from disguised discouragement. Genuine concern gives you information and allows you to decide. Hidden resentment often creates fear and pressure. A true friend might say, "Think carefully before making this decision because I see a risk." A resentful person may say, "You are never going to succeed anyway, so why bother?" One protects you. The other limits you. There is another important sign. They may support your dreams only when those dreams remain small. They are comfortable when you talk about possibilities, but become uncomfortable when you actually begin achieving them. They may celebrate your intentions because intentions do not threaten them. But once your plans turn into results, their behavior changes. Do not argue with this pattern. Study it. You do not need to convince someone that your goals are worthwhile. You do not need permission to improve your life. And you certainly do not need to shrink yourself so that someone else can remain comfortable. At the same time, do not become paranoid. Not every disagreement is sabotage. Sometimes a friend sees a weakness you cannot see. Sometimes their criticism is exactly what you need. The test is whether they want you to become stronger, even when your growth changes the relationship. A real friend may challenge you, but they will not secretly need you to fail. Your growth will eventually reveal who values you and who only values the version of you that was easier to control. Keep moving forward, but watch carefully who encourages your evolution and who repeatedly tries to pull you back into the person you have outgrown. Trust is one of the most valuable things you can give another person because trust gives them access to parts of you that the rest of the world cannot see. You reveal your fears, your insecurities, your private struggles, your ambitions, and the experiences you would never casually share with a stranger. When that trust is placed in the right person, vulnerability becomes a source of connection. But when it is placed in someone who secretly resents you, your vulnerability can become information they store for the right moment. This is why you must pay attention not only to what people know about you, but to how they use what they know. A genuine friend may know your weaknesses and still protect them. They understand that your private struggles are not entertainment, ammunition, or material for public conversation. They may disagree with you, become angry with you, or even distance themselves from you, but they do not deliberately expose the things you trusted them to protect. Someone carrying hidden resentment may behave differently. They remember the details you told them during your most vulnerable moments. Then, when an argument happens, they suddenly bring those details into the conversation. A fear you once confessed becomes an insult. A personal failure becomes a joke. A private insecurity becomes something they mention in front of other people. A dream you once shared becomes evidence that you are unrealistic or incapable. Notice the timing. People reveal themselves most clearly when emotions become intense. When everything is peaceful, almost anyone can appear trustworthy, but conflict tests character. It shows you whether someone values the relationship more than their desire to win. If a person knows exactly where you are vulnerable and repeatedly chooses those places when they want to hurt you, that is not simply careless behavior. It is a pattern worth taking seriously. You should also watch how your private information travels. Perhaps you tell one friend something personal, and somehow other people begin knowing about it. When you ask how they found out, the explanation is always vague. Maybe your friend claims it was harmless conversation. Maybe they say everyone already knew. Maybe they laugh and tell you that you are being too serious. But privacy does not become less important simply because someone else does not understand its value. A person who respects you understands that access must come with responsibility. This does not mean you should become suspicious of everyone. If you begin treating every friendship as a potential threat, you will destroy your ability to build genuine relationships. The lesson is not to stop trusting people. The lesson is to trust gradually and intelligently. Watch what someone does with small pieces of information before giving them access to larger ones. Share something harmless and see whether they protect it. Set a small boundary and see whether they respect it. And tell them something personal and observe whether they treat it with maturity. Over time, their behavior will tell you whether they deserve deeper access to your life. Trust should be earned through patterns, not demanded through words. Some people will say, "You can tell me anything," but their behavior will eventually reveal whether that statement is true. Others will never make dramatic promises about loyalty, yet they will consistently protect your privacy, defend your dignity, and refuse to use your weaknesses against you. The difference is action. And when you discover that someone has repeatedly turned your vulnerability into a weapon, you do not need to create a dramatic confrontation. You can simply reduce their access. Stop sharing what they do not need to know. Stop explaining your deepest fears. Stop giving them information they have already demonstrated they cannot handle responsibly. Boundaries are not punishment. They are protection. The strongest response to betrayal is not always revenge. Sometimes it is silence, distance, and a decision that this person will never again receive the same level of access to your inner world, because once someone shows you that they can weaponize your vulnerability, believe the pattern and protect what you reveal next. There is another revealing test of friendship that many people overlook. Watch how someone behaves when other people are watching. A person may seem supportive when you are alone together, yet their behavior can change dramatically when an audience appears. Suddenly they interrupt you more often, make you the subject of embarrassing jokes, reveal information you expected to remain private, or compete with you for attention. The change may be subtle, but repeated shifts in behavior can reveal a deeper struggle with status, comparison, and resentment. Why does this happen? Because some people are not simply concerned with the relationship. They are concerned with how the relationship makes them look. When you are alone, there is no audience to impress. They may treat you warmly because there is nothing to prove. But when other people arrive, the social environment changes. Now there is attention, comparison, and an opportunity to establish position. Someone who secretly feels threatened by you may suddenly need to place themselves above you. Perhaps you tell a story, and they interrupt before you finish. Perhaps you mention an achievement, and they immediately explain why it was not as impressive as it sounds. Perhaps someone compliments you, and your friend quickly changes the subject or brings attention back to themselves. Maybe they reveal something embarrassing about you and then laugh as though it were harmless. Watch what happens after the laughter. Do they look genuinely amused, or are they watching your reaction? Are they trying to include everyone in the fun, or are they repeatedly making you the target? Do they protect your dignity when someone else criticizes you, or do they join the attack because it gives them an opportunity to gain social approval? These moments can reveal more than private conversations, because social pressure exposes priorities. A genuine friend does not need to diminish you in order to increase their own value. They can allow you to receive attention without feeling invisible. They can celebrate your accomplishments without turning the moment into a competition. They can introduce you proudly rather than subtly undermining you. But someone who constantly compares themselves to you may experience your presence as a threat. This can become especially obvious when you begin receiving respect from people they want to impress. They may suddenly become critical of you, correct insignificant details, or point out your mistakes. The goal may not be to help you improve. It may be to make sure the audience sees them as superior. And once again, one incident is not enough. People become nervous in social situations. People make bad jokes. People interrupt without realizing it. Do not turn every awkward moment into evidence of betrayal. Instead, look for consistency. Does this person repeatedly change when an audience appears? Do they become more competitive? Do they expose private information? Do they make you feel smaller so they can feel larger? Do they seem uncomfortable when other people admire you? Patterns deserve attention. You also need to watch your own behavior. If you become obsessed with proving that someone dislikes you, you can create conflict where none exists. The goal is not to become suspicious. The goal is to become perceptive. You do not need to confront every person whose behavior makes you uncomfortable. Sometimes observation is more valuable than confrontation. When you recognize a repeated pattern, quietly adjust your level of trust. You can remain polite without remaining vulnerable. You can remain friendly without giving someone unlimited access to you. There is strength in understanding that not every relationship deserves the same level of closeness. Some people belong in your inner circle. Others belong at a respectful distance. The difference should be determined by patterns of loyalty, respect, and behavior, not by history alone. A person who truly values you will not need an audience before they treat you well. So watch the transformation. Watch who they become when the room gets larger, the attention gets stronger, and the opportunity to compete appears. Because sometimes the friend standing beside you in private reveals their true feelings only when there are other eyes watching. The most important lesson is that you should never judge a friendship from a single moment. People have bad days. They become jealous sometimes, they make mistakes, speak carelessly, and occasionally behave in ways they later regret. If you begin interpreting every disagreement, every missed message, or every awkward interaction as proof that someone secretly hates you, you will create enemies where there may be none. The real skill is learning to recognize patterns without becoming paranoid. Words are easy to control. Patterns are much harder to hide. Someone can tell you they care about you. They can call you a close friend. They can promise loyalty and insist that you can trust them. But eventually, their behavior will reveal whether those words have substance. Watch how they treat your success, your vulnerability, your boundaries, your ambitions, and your reputation. These areas expose character because they require genuine goodwill rather than simple performance. Ask yourself what happens repeatedly. When you succeed, do they celebrate you or quietly diminish your achievement? When you are struggling, do they support you or secretly enjoy your weakness? When you set boundaries, do they respect them or try to punish you for having them? When you share something private, do they protect it or eventually use it against you? When other people are watching, do they defend your dignity or compete with you? No single answer defines a person, but a consistent pattern can. This is why you should stop listening only to what people say and start studying what their behavior consistently produces. A person may say they want the best for you while repeatedly making you doubt yourself. They may claim to be joking while constantly humiliating you. They may call themselves supportive while discouraging every opportunity that could help you grow. Eventually, the contradiction becomes too obvious to ignore. But there is another danger here, becoming so focused on identifying hidden enemies that you lose the ability to trust anyone. Suspicion can become its own prison. If you constantly analyze every facial expression, every message, and every change in tone, you will never experience genuine connection because you will always be searching for betrayal. That is not awareness. That is fear. True awareness is calmer. You observe without immediately judging. You collect evidence before reaching conclusions. You give people opportunities to correct their behavior. You communicate boundaries clearly. And when the same harmful pattern continues despite those boundaries, you make a decision based on reality rather than emotion. Sometimes the right response is not confrontation. You do not need to announce that you have discovered someone's true nature. You do not need revenge. You do not need to expose them publicly. You simply change the level of access they have to your life. Trust becomes more selective. You can remain respectful while creating distance. You can wish someone well without allowing them into your inner circle. You can appreciate the history you shared without pretending the relationship is still healthy. Not everyone who once mattered to you deserves unlimited access to the person you are becoming. This is especially important because people change. A friendship that was healthy years ago may become unhealthy as your lives move in different directions. Sometimes there is no dramatic betrayal. There is simply a growing difference in values, priorities, and behavior. Do not force a relationship to remain close simply because it has existed for a long time. The people around you should not constantly leave you feeling smaller, anxious, humiliated, or uncertain about your own worth. Friendship should not require you to repeatedly abandon your boundaries just to maintain peace. At the same time, choose your circle carefully enough that you do not need to live defensively. Look for people who can celebrate your success without competing with you, challenge you without humiliating you, protect your vulnerability without exploiting it, and remain loyal when there is nothing to gain. The ultimate lesson is simple. Do not become obsessed with who secretly hates you. Become wise about who deserves your trust. Watch patterns, protect your boundaries, and let people's consistent behavior determine how much access they receive to your life. Because the strongest form of discernment is not learning to suspect everyone. It is learning exactly whom you can safely trust.